All right, so my Tabor City home here, and today we're going to talk about tongue and groove and how to get tongue and groove off of a wall. So this area of our house was a den, and we removed a veneered plywood. You can see a little bit here on the wall behind me where they'd used like an adhesive glue. They had also nailed the veneer to the walls. But once we removed that plywood, we found that we had tongue and groove behind the plywood. Now, I know a lot of people right now are pretty high on tongue and groove or shiplap. Tongue and groove and shiplap are pretty close. They're not the same. I'll show you the difference here in just a minute. But tongue and groove just isn't going to work for us, number one, because this wall's going to have to move. And as you're going to see, it's somewhat difficult to preserve this wood while you're taking it down. The thing that I really wanted to show in this video is the way to remove this with the least amount of headache. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to show you what happens if you try to remove it from the bottom up versus from the top down. Extraordinary difference, all right? So we're going to take our tools for today. We have two different pry bars and just a regular hammer, okay? For the most part, this small pry bar is exactly what we're going to need here. The larger pry bar, sometimes we need to get an angle on the wood to get a little bit more leverage. That larger pry bar works pretty good. So, all right. So this right here was actually the top of a piece of tongue and groove that had been left on there from previously trying to remove it from the bottom up, and I'll show you in a minute how that works. All right, so that's one board. That's what it took to get that one board off, prime from the bottom up. If you can see this edge here, as we took the board off, we actually left this lip all the way through the board above it, and we'd have to address that as well. So I'm gonna back the camera up a little bit, just so that you can see a decent angle at the top of these boards. All right, so that's what it took to get the tongue and groove off if you come from the top down. So top down is always the best way to go. Now, I've talked a little bit about tongue and groove versus shiplap. So shiplap is very similar to tongue and groove. The difference being that on tongue and groove, this little peak up here is what they call the tongue. This notch down here is what they call the groove. Generally, in shiplap, what you're going to see is this tongue is moved all the way to the inside of the board, and when it comes to this groove, this inner ridge here is missing. So it's kind of like a lightning bolt shape, or like a Z, if you want to call it that. That would be more of a true shiplap, where this would be a tongue and groove, all right? So the peak of the board below it actually rests inside the notch of the board above it, all right? So, and that's why it's so difficult to take these boards off from the bottom up and you would want to remove tongue and groove from the top down. Now, when you're starting your first course on the wall, at the very top, what I found was, to be honest with you, you just have to be brutal. Take the claw hammer. Now again, you can see we've got some electrical on this wall. We have an old HVAC register discharge that's no longer going to be in play because everything we've moved into the ceiling now is a HVAC unit. But you do not want to go removing boards, hammering on walls with the electrical on. So all these electrical lines in this room have been actually shut off at the breaker box, and we tested them with a tester to make sure that there was no power running through them. So, but when you get to that very top course, you could just take the claw of the hammer and just bust those boards up, and then you're just gonna have to pry them out there so you can get an angle from above them to come down with that pry bar. And again, I mean, the small pry bars like this do wonders on this work. It gives you good leverage, and you'll see from the top angle of tongue and groove that you'll see where the nails will come in and actually intentionally nail through that tongue area down into the stud. All right. Now, these were placed in here, I'm pretty much guessing this room was remodeled in 1979, and those were placed in there in 1979 because they redid this entire area of the house. The modern stuff that goes in, a lot of times they're just using air nailers and they're using finishing nails, and that stuff should come off way easier. I mean, these are pretty robust nails. So, but I would still imagine that taking tongue and groove and or shiplap off of the wall, even with the finish nails, is still going to be easier if you approach it from the top, working your way down. All right. So hope that helps if you're doing this project. And it's my Tabor City home. You guys have a great day.